Narendra Modi has met and talked over phone with Presidents Putin as well as Zelenskyy. It was PM Modi who said this is not an era of war, where he urged both Russia and Ukraine that the only way forward is dialogue and diplomacy. Today as well, Prime Minister Modi said that peace is possible.
युद्ध हो, संघर्ष हो, आतंकवादी हमले हो, लेकिन उसमें भी जब मासूम बच्चों की कत्ल होती है, मासूम बच्चों को मरते हुए देखते हैं, तब हृदय छलनी हो जाता है और वो दर्द बहुत भयानक होता है। पीढ़ी के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए शांति सर्वाधिक आवश्यक है, लेकिन मैं ये भी जानता हूं कि युद्ध के मैदान में समाधान संभव नहीं होते। बम, बंदूक और गोलियों के बीच समाधान और शांति वार्ताएं सफल नहीं होती हैं और हमने वार्ता के माध्यम से ही शांति के रास्ते अपनाने होंगे और शांति की बहाली में भारत हर संभव सहयोग करने के लिए तैयार है। एक्सेलेंसी, कल हमारी बात में ये भी हमारा मन बना था और शांति की बहाली में भारत हर संभव सहयोग करने के लिए तैयार है और मैं भी आपको भी आश्वस्त करता हूं और विश्व समुदाय को भी आश्वस्त करता हूं कि भारत शांति के पक्ष में है और शांति के लिए मेरे मित्र राष्ट्रपति पुतिन की कल बातों को सुनकर के मेरे मन में एक आशा पैदा हुई है और मैं इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं और मीडिया जगत के मित्रों को भी मैं कहूंगा पासिबा।
Now, despite this, when the Prime Minister's Russia visit was underway, here's the snide remark that came in from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He said it is a huge disappointment and a devastating blow to peace efforts to see the leader of the world's largest democracy hug the world's most bloody criminal in Moscow. That's the tweet he put out. Now, India, remember, has had a very clear stance since 2022 amid Western pressure. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had categorically stated that Europe should not think that its problems are the world's problems and the world's problems are not theirs. This, remember, as US and European nations enacted aid bills for Ukraine and their arms industry grew during this war. And therefore, it's a bit rich to be told what to do by countries that themselves have displayed hypocrisy during this war. To talk more on this, on the broadcast, I'm joined by Oleksandr Merezhko, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Ukraine. I'm also joined by Mr. Anil Trigunayat, former ambassador. Good evening, namaskar, welcome to both of you. Oleksandr, let me start with you. What makes the Ukrainian president so upset with the Indian Prime Minister visiting Russia? The Indian Prime Minister has always maintained that we are friends both with Russia as well as Ukraine and that we have our own independent foreign policy. Why this bullying by the Ukrainian president as to what, we should do what he wants?
Well, first of all, I would like to express the most sincere and the most profound gratitude to Indian people and personally to the Indian Prime Minister for participating in the Global Peace Summit. We strongly appreciate efforts by India on the road of peace, and we understand that a lot depends on Indian position. That's why we care so much about India, and we are happy that we are on the same page in a sense that we understand Ukraine and India, we understand the peace in the same way, as a peace based on the UN Charter, as a peace, as Prime Minister today mentioned, peace based on sovereign equality, peace based upon territorial integrity, peace free from aggression. So we appreciate everything. And answering your question, why there is disappointment, why the Ukrainian president has mentioned disappointment. Of course, we should be disappointed because we understand in which situation war criminal Putin has put Indian Prime Minister. Putin has unleashed a new wave of genocidal attacks killing Ukrainian children on the same day when Indian Prime Minister was in Moscow. It was done deliberately. It was done to humiliate India and Indian Prime Minister. Of course, we should be disappointed, and we should do everything together to stop Russian aggression.
No, Alexander, I don't think that was done to humiliate the Indian Prime Minister. I think the Indian Prime Minister has been accorded a very special welcome by the Russian president. Plus the fact that India has its own independence in its foreign policy, and we know what we're doing. But let me take this across to Ambassador Trigunayat. Ambassador Trigunayat, how do you see this really? You know, President Putin and Prime Minister Modi having that bilateral meeting, Prime Minister Modi making this visit after several years, but the Ukrainian president clearly trying to put across a point and bulldoze his way and his perspective into this bilateral relationship.
Well, Shreya, as you know that India's position on this war from day one has been that it should be through dialogue, diplomacy, that the peace should be achieved, that there should be a respect for the UN Charter, which necessarily incorporates territorial integrity and sovereignty. This is very clearly. Earlier also at Samarkand, Prime Minister Modi even told President Putin that this was not an era of war. We have been championing the cause of peace and dialogue and diplomacy between the two countries. Because today again, I was quite disappointed by this statement. I can understand their frustration of our Ukrainian friends. But at the same time, if you remember in G7 summit, Prime Minister Modi met President Zelenskyy, and India has been asked again and again to play a role by all the actors, whether it is United States, whether it is Ukraine or anybody else, that we have good relations with the Russians. It's a special strategic partnership, and we can play a role in that. Now, you cannot play a role by standing aside or condemning a country. You need to be an honest interlocutor, which is looking for peace, and that's precisely what Prime Minister Modi has done, if you carefully watch. And as far as the attacks today is concerned, this was not that there is a war going on. So these kind of things can be expected. But at the same time, Prime Minister Modi condemned these. He expressed his anguish. He expressed pain directly to President Putin. So this is something that needs to be taken. You can't take things out of context and start, telling that this is wrong or that is wrong. Somebody has to talk of peace. There is one bloc which is entirely for war, which has brought this kind of disaster on Ukraine. I mean, we understand that everybody fights for their sovereignty and territorial integrity, and India has always been against the external interventions, whether in the United States, which has done in Ukraine or in Iraq, or it was in Libya. I was ambassador there. I have seen what has happened to those countries, the disaster. So any external interventions we are against. We are for peace and we want peace, and we have offered to do whatever we can. But peace cannot be achieved by talking with one side only. You have to talk to both sides, and that's precisely what Prime Minister Modi has been trying to do. And we have a very strong bilateral relationship with Russia.
Yep. Alexander, would you like to respond to that? You know, just the fact that why is it necessary for any country during this war between Russia and Ukraine to take sides? Why can't we have a balanced view? The Indian Prime Minister has said this is not an era of war. It has urged both Russia as well as Ukraine in the past, and even today, he said that the only way forward is dialogue and diplomacy. When the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with your President Zelenskyy at the G7 summit on the sidelines there in Italy, Russia did not point a finger and say, this is disappointing, why are you meeting the Ukrainian leader? Why this sort of bullying by Ukraine then?
First of all, there is no need to choose a side or to stand, for example, with Ukraine. But there is a strong need to stay with UN Charter and with international law. Such principles as non-use of force and territorial integrity. All we are asking from the countries all over the world, including India, which is a very powerful country, which has influence over Russia, which is the biggest democracy, we ask you to support the UN Charter and to help to stop the aggression, to help to stop genocide. Let me paraphrase President Kennedy, who once said that
Alexander,
he
doesn't
mentioned
standing for
Ireland, but
peace
we
and
can
talking
refer to
about peace and urging both sides to work towards a peaceful solution, doesn't that mean standing by the guidelines of the United Nations, standing by the guidelines that would put forth and move forward towards the path of peace?
peaceful solution can be reached very quickly and very efficiently. Russia should abide by the UN Charter and withdraw immediately its troops from the territory of Ukraine. This is it. And if India helps to put enough pressure on Russia to conform to the UN Charter, it can happen. So everything what we need to do together to put enough pressure on Russia to make it observe and respect the UN Charter.
I think Ambassador Trigunayat, India has made it very clear today. The Prime Minister also made it clear to President Putin that India wants peace. India wants this war to end soon. And he's made it clear whenever he's met with President Putin as well as President Zelenskyy. But do you think here India has walked a diplomatic tightrope very strategically and smoothly despite the kind of pressures that have come on us from the Western world?
You know, Shreya, in a war, both sides can justify themselves. But we all know what is there. Russia considers this war not between Russia and Ukraine, but Russia and the United States and the West. So they look at it in a much bigger thing, being a bigger power. And whereas Ukraine has become basically a country in this sense suffering from this war because of the Western ambitions also to contain Russia. So that's how they look at it. The purpose is that till they come to the table, it will not be possible to resolve it. Now everybody is having their own positions, and with those positions, it is very difficult to do that. Somebody has to cease fire and then come to table and talk and then start withdrawing because both sides will start from maximalist positions. Now, if you there was, I mean, my friend also knows that there was already an agreement in April last year, March, April last year, and that could have prevented this whole bloodshed that is going on for now. But this was the British Prime Minister. Then Boris Johnson said that we must strategically defeat Russia. So they get caught into this kind of a geopolitical turmoil that is happening, and that is shaping the whole world today. India is trying to do that. Somehow there could be some peace should be achieved. There are several peace formulas. There are several countries that are trying to work on it. And hopefully there would be some place where both sides will have their own security concerns and territorial concerns taken care of, that of Ukraine.
Alexander, can I ask you, one of the major concerns when Russia and Ukraine had this war initially was the fact that Russia kept saying that Ukraine should join the NATO. And Ukraine has been saying we will join the NATO. That hasn't happened in more than 2 years now.
Well, you see, Ukraine is the same country as India. We have the same rights under international law. We are sovereign countries and we have the right to choose whether or not to join any particular international organizations, including NATO. It's our sovereign right. And no one has the right to deny us this, neither in case of Ukraine nor in India. And it was mentioned that Russia thinks for some reason that it's waging war against the West. Then the logical question arises, why wouldn't it attack the West or, for example, the United States or Germany? Why is it attacking Ukraine? Why it made Ukraine the victim of Russian aggression? Ukraine has not attacked Russia. And when we're talking about security concerns, we have the right to care about our security because we are the victim of Russian aggression, not vice versa. Of course, our security concerns should be taken into consideration.
And point well taken. But my question was not that. My question was, have you asked the United States and the European nations when you're getting the NATO membership?
Well, tomorrow there will be a summit, and this decision has already been taken. We can find this decision in the documents of NATO, in resolutions, saying that the doors of NATO are open for Ukraine. So we will become NATO member state because it's the only guarantee of our survival. It's the only guarantee against Russian genocidal war against Ukraine.
Well, that's what the Western world has been telling you, Oleksandr, in Ukraine. But Ambassador Trigunayat, do you believe that this will happen in the near future, NATO membership for Ukraine, as well as how this war now really moves forward, considering now there are two very separate blocs with countries like India really walking that diplomatic tightrope?
Well,
unfortunately,
we will definitely join NATO. We have no other
Oleksandr, this
option
is for
left, because we can survive as a state only by joining NATO. This is it. It's very simple. And I'm sure that India can decide for itself to join or to not to join any international organization. We don't deny this right to India. And no one has
exactly what we're saying, Oleksandr. India can decide for itself which kind of foreign policy it wants to opt and which country it wants to be friends with, which country it wants, the leaders of which it wants to meet. But Ambassador Trigunayat, my question was for you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, at the moment the things are, despite every effort, it looks very unlikely that Ukraine will join NATO now, or there will be anything. I mean, there could be statements. Ukraine is becoming a casualty in this superpower games, and that's a very unfortunate situation. And I fully agree with my friend that why should they suffer? But this is how it is. The one side is supporting the other, and the other side is just thinking that they could keep it away. So this is a situation that will continue. They have full right to join NATO or EU or whatever they want. It is up to them and what kind of security concerns. But is the NATO ready to fight for them? I mean, that is something they'll have to take call by President Zelenskyy. He'll have to take a call that what is good for him. How can you achieve the peace? Now, the thing is, Russians are saying we want peace. Ukrainians who say they want peace. But the peace terms are so very different and diverse and polarized that it's very difficult to achieve the peace at this stage. So countries like India, they're just trying to provide some kind of a platform where they can be interlocutors so that some kind of a dialogue could begin, at least, which could lead to some kind of a solution that is acceptable to both sides.
Right. All right. We'll have to see how this really moves forward. I'll have to wrap it up here. Oleksandr Merezhko and Anil Trigunayat, thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us on Nation Tonight and sharing your perspectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, viewers, let's shift our focus now to France. The far right are not in power in France, but no one is at the moment. And why is that? Because it's a hung assembly in the country. Emmanuel Macron has asked Gabriel Attal to stay on temporarily as the French Prime Minister to maintain stability after the snap general election. After multiple rounds of voting, the left-wing New Popular Front coalition gathered 182 seats. This made it the largest group in France's National Assembly. Macron's centrist Ensemble Alliance won 163 seats, and the far-right National Rally Party and its allies won 143. But the New Popular Front Party, despite getting the highest number of seats out of the three parties, has still fallen short of getting the majority of 289 seats in the 577-seat parliament. What happens next? Well, hurried negotiations and alliances are part of France's near future now.
Chose que nous ont envoyé je crois partout en France, nos concitoyens, c'est qu'ils veulent pas le chaos de LFI. Ils veulent pas le bordel dans les rues. On a un moment extrêmement festif, on a le Tour de France, il y a la fin de l'Euro, il y a les Jeux Olympiques qui arrivent. Je crois que ce qu'ils nous ont envoyé comme message, c'est du calme. On veut du calme, on l'a parfaitement entendu, on va prendre quelques semaines pour construire cette alliance. Et je crois avec toutes les forces républicaines de bonne volonté qui veulent améliorer la vie de nos concitoyens.